Now, the combined resources of KESQ News Channel 3, the Desert Sun, and CBS Local 2 News present Your Vote 2014, the congressional debate with incumbent Raul Ruiz and challenger Brian Nestande.
Good evening and welcome to the first and only debate between the candidates for the 36th Congressional District. I'm Karen Devine with KESQ News Channel 3 and I am your moderator tonight. Democratic incumbent Dr. Raul Ruiz and his Republican challenger Assemblyman Brian Nestande take the stage to ask for your vote. Congressman Ruiz is an emergency room physician. Voters first elected him to Congress in 2012, defeating longtime Republican incumbent Mary Bono. Mr. Nestande helped elect the late Congressman Sonny Bono and worked as his chief of staff. He also served as chief of staff for former Congresswoman Mary Bono. Mr. Nestande is a three-term California Assemblyman. Alongside me tonight, my two colleagues. To the left, Desert Sun political reporter Erica Fauci. To the right of me, a longtime anchorman for CBS Local 2, Chris Long. The three of us will be asking questions tonight. The candidates did not receive a copy of those questions. To the rules now, each candidate, you're going to see on the screen there, will give a 2-minute opening statement. Then they get a 1-minute answer. They get to answer their question from our panel and questions submitted by Desert Sun readers and our viewers on KESQ and CBS Local 2. Their opponent will get 30 seconds for rebuttal. At the end of tonight's debate, each candidate will get 90 seconds to make a closing argument. So let's begin tonight. A coin toss did determine who will go first in opening statements. And Mr. Nestande, you will go first. You may begin.
Congressman Ruiz. Good evening, and thank you for watching. Do you believe our country is moving in the right direction? I do not, and that is why I'm running for Congress. It's simple. The bigger the government, the smaller your paycheck. 2 years ago, Congressman Ruiz promised he would cut spending and balance the budget. Instead, he voted 3 times to raise our national debt. Every one of you, your children, your grandchildren, each of us owe $55,000 to pay this debt. Congressman Ruiz's first term, he raised the debt by nearly $2 trillion. I believe in smaller government and less spending. In my first years as your state assemblyman, I voted to cut $20 billion and wrote a bill to certify that the budget must be balanced or legislators do not get paid. My opponent claims to be independent, yet he voted to support President Obama 90% of the time. As your congressman, I have a proven record of being independent. My opponent claims to protect seniors, but he supported cutting Medicare by $700 billion. I will fight to return the money to our seniors. My wife is here with me tonight with our 7 children. Like many parents, we are concerned about their future and their safety. Our country is at war. While we battle terrorism overseas, we must also protect our homeland. Congressman Ruiz opposed a bill to secure our borders first. I will protect our nation's borders. My opponent claims to protect the middle class, yet burdensome regulations and higher taxes under Obama and Ruiz are driving businesses overseas. 80% of new jobs are created by small businesses. I will work to get the government out of the way. That is why I'm endorsed by the Chamber of Commerce and the National Federation of Independent Businesses. The bigger the government, the smaller your paycheck. That's why I'm running for Congress. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nestande. Mr. Ruiz, you now have 2 minutes for opening statement.
Thank you very much. I'd like to start by thanking KESQ, Local 2, and the Desert Sun for hosting this debate. Debates are an important part of political campaigns, and they sometimes don't receive the attention they deserve. You're making an important contribution to your readers and viewers. I also want to thank Assemblyman Nestande for his willingness to participate. Even more importantly, I want to publicly congratulate him for the class and dignity with which he has conducted his campaign so far. Both of our campaigns have focused on the issues, and even when we disagree, we have done so with respect for each other and the voters. So thank you, Brian.
Oh, my pleasure.
Thank you very much. As you know, I'm not a career politician. I went to medical school and became an emergency room doctor because I wanted to help improve the lives of people here in our community. That's also why I decided to run for office 2 years ago. Washington is broken because too many career politicians are more interested in political bickering and partisan games than getting things done. But as an ER doctor, I was trained to work as a team to solve problems. That's exactly what I've done in Congress. I worked with Republicans to pass a bill that improves health coverage for veterans. I was part of a bipartisan group that passed a law to cut off Congress's pay if they don't approve a budget on time. I've helped local seniors and vets collect nearly $2 million they were owed by the government, and I've stood up against every effort to cut Social Security and Medicare. I believe in results, not excuses. Just as important, I believe in standing up for the families, small businesses, and retirees of the Coachella Valley, many of whom are struggling to make ends meet. Assemblyman Nestande has different priorities, and that's what this debate and this election are about.
Gentlemen, thank you for your opening statements. A coin toss determined who would get the first question tonight in the debate. This one will go to Mr. Ruiz. Erica will begin.
Congressman, in August, after urging Speaker Boehner to address the immigration crisis, you missed two key votes. After refusing to acknowledge your opponent's calls to say how you would have voted, a statement was quietly put on your website to say you opposed the two bills. Considering how important this issue is for the region, don't you think voters deserve a better explanation of where you stand?
Thank you for that question. You know, first let me make a statement that will help explain my view on comprehensive immigration reform. First, it's a privilege, not a right, for immigrants to live in this country. And every sovereign nation has the right to protect its borders. You know, those votes that were missed would have made the problems worse. They weren't comprehensive immigration reform votes. They would have taken protections away from children who suffer from sexual abuse through human trafficking. So I would have definitely voted no, because that's the right thing to do. I am not for amnesty. I am for comprehensive immigration reform that will protect and secure our borders, that will improve our local economy that depends so much on immigrant labor with agriculture, tourism, and construction, and that will have a earned path to citizenship for those who play by the rules, pay a fine, and have never been arrested.
Thank you, Mr. Ruiz. Mr. Nestande, 30-second rebuttal.
Well, if a pipe is broken in your home, the first thing you're going to do is turn off the water. And with immigration, we have to secure our borders first. And Congressman Ruiz, as he mentioned, he voted not to, or didn't vote, said he would not have voted to secure the borders first. He wants a comprehensive fix. I think you have to secure the borders first before you get to the other parts of immigration. He is in favor of the Senate bill, which is a 1,000-page bill. When they say comprehensive, that sometimes is a word for something you won't understand, because just like the health care bill, where Speaker Pelosi said you have to pass it to find out what's in it, that will be that Senate bill. Must pass smaller bills, readable, digestible, bills that we can argue and understand.
Thank you, Mr. Nestande. CBS Local 2's Chris Long will take the next question.
Thank you, Karen. Gentlemen, let me say also thank you for participating. It's my feeling in office this important. We should have mandatory debates. That's a moot point tonight because both you gentlemen decided to take part. My question goes first to the Assemblyman. A Gallup poll released last month shows 60% of Americans approved of military action in Syria and Iraq against the group known as ISIS, or ISIL if you will. Is President Obama doing enough to address the terrorist threat? And should we send in boots on the ground?
Well, first of all, what's going on right now in the Middle East is a direct result of President Obama's lack of clarity, lack of a real foreign policy. When he came to office, he decided he was going to pull back America from the world stage. He was not going to, or did not want us to be the world superpower that we are. And when you step back from the world stage, you leave a vacuum. And in that vacuum is chaos. Chaos has been filled with ISIS, ISIL, all these other terrorist groups. That's because, first of all, when President Obama said, Syria, do not use chemical weapons against your own people, he drew a line in the sand, and then they did, and he did nothing. The world watched and said, this guy doesn't keep his word, he's weak. And with that, you've seen Vladimir Putin walk into Crimea, into the Ukraine, and that's what's happening in the Middle East right now. And it's not just me saying that. Hillary Clinton also said it was a mistake by not acting quicker. His former Democrat Secretary of Defense, Leon Panetta, said that. Henry Kissinger has said that. It's been a lack of leadership from President Obama that's caused this problem.
Thank you, Assemblyman. Congressman, 30-second rebuttal.
Well, I want to say that ISIS poses a serious threat. Terrorism poses a serious threat not only to our nation but everyone around the globe. I disagree with the president on many things, and this is one of those disagreements. You see, we need to send a message to ISIS loud and clear that anyone killing Americans anywhere around the globe will be brought to justice. I agree with a strategy that will build coalitions, use airstrikes to take down their infrastructure, prevent boots on the ground, and stop their financial transactions and train allies.
Mr. Ruiz, thank you. Again, to my colleague, Chris Long.
Congressman, we'll bring it home with a question here about the deficit, about taxes, and about our all-important housing industry. With another year of federal deficits, Congress is again eyeing a reduction of tax benefits. One area that could face cuts is the mortgage interest deduction for homeowners. The MID is seen by many as crucial for the continued turnaround of America's housing industry. Do you see yourself ever voting in favor of reducing or even eliminating the mortgage interest deduction? And if not, what tax benefits would you consider cutting?
That's a good question. Thank you. So this is very important to understand. We have a deficit, and we need to really improve our budget because our spending right now is out of control. We need to make some efforts in improving it. But here's the difference between my opponent and me. I want to balance the budget. We need to be fiscally responsible, and we need to reduce our deficit. But we need to balance the budget not on the backs of our seniors and middle class. It's our middle class that has been suffering throughout these years. Income inequality has grown, and families like my families are struggling and working harder and making less. That's why I believe that we need to protect those tax cuts. We need to make sure that homeowners have the capital and the finances they need to buy their home, and we need to help them stay in their homes.
Thank you, Mr. Ruiz. Mr. Nestande, 30-second rebuttal.
Well, thank you. Those are good talking points, but they don't match your record. You've continued to want to spend more money. You said we do not spend enough. So by saying that we're going to not balance the budget on the back of seniors, you took $700 billion out of Medicare. That's a fact. It's not convenient, but $700 billion out of Medicare to fund Obamacare. So I would like to see a better tax reform system, but particularly in the corporate tax. We have the highest corporate tax rate of all developed nations. We can lower that rate down and businesses will expand, money will come back. There's $2 trillion sitting across the seas. If we lower those tax rates, that money will come back, invest in American companies here.
Very quickly though, would you consider cutting the mortgage interest deduction?
No, I don't think we should. No, I do not.
Mr. Ruiz, would you like 15 more seconds to discuss this?
Absolutely. First of all, those $700 billion that my opponent is referring to are reductions in overpayments to hospitals, insurance companies, and physicians. So that is absolutely false and not true.
Thank you. Thank you, candidates. On to the next question now. Erica Felci from the Desert Sun.
This is for the Assemblyman. You authored legislation that, if it had passed, would have required all California lawmakers to enroll in the plans offered under the Federal Health Insurance Exchange. Your argument was that lawmakers should have the same coverage that they are imposing on residents. Based on that, have you or your family members enrolled in any such plans? And would you do it as a member of Congress?
Well, thank you. And the idea, once again, as you said, is to have legislators live under law. As they passed Obamacare, I thought it'd be appropriate that all legislators get their care through Obamacare so we can see the problems that were going on in the networks and so on. The Democrat legislators said no. And Congressman Ruiz said he was not going to take a subsidy when Obamacare to purchase your health care. First you said you would not take a subsidy, and then you reverse that and you decide to take a subsidy to get your health care. I think that's wrong. The law was written originally for a congressman not to take subsidies, but you took it anyways.
Reaction, Mr. Ruiz?
Yes, first of all, that was an employer contribution, and Assemblyman Brian Nestande, don't you take subsidies or the employer contribution from the state?
Yeah,
so
but
it's very interesting that I'm an
question.
emergency room physician and I'm trained to solve problems. The difference with the Affordable Care Act between my opponent and me is that I want to fix it. That's why I stood up to President Obama, Congresswoman Pelosi, and voted to delay the individual mandate for a year. My opponent wants to repeal it, take us back to the days where insurance companies discriminate against people with pre-existing health conditions, make seniors pay more for their medicines, and women pay more for their insurance premiums.
This is a good discussion. Can
Would
we keep
you like
going?
to? Absolutely. Could you take?
I want to get back to the doctor-patient relationship. What you have done is put the government right in the middle of that. Obamacare, remember when he said if you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor? That wasn't true. If you like your insurance plan, you can keep your insurance plan. That wasn't true. Over 6 million people had their insurance plan canceled, only to be forced to go buy insurance that was much higher, sometimes double the rate. this is wrong. There were some flaws in the healthcare system, pre-existing conditions and so on. Fix those. Don't throw out the greatest healthcare system in the world. That's a big mistake.
Mr. Ruiz, another 30 seconds.
Yes, my opponent has said multiple times he wants to repeal the Affordable Care Act. That means he wants to allow and take us back to a day when insurance companies would discriminate against people with pre-existing health conditions, and he wants to take away health insurance from thousands of people here in this district who have health insurance for the first time in their lives.
Okay, thank you, candidates. Moving on now, this is from me. We asked our viewers to be a part of this debate by telling us what subjects are important to them. Education, more importantly and specifically, the implementation of Common Core standards. Our largest Valley School District is getting some mixed reaction by implementing Common Core. Candidates, are you a fan of the Common Core standards, and is this the answer to bringing our public school ranking up? This question goes to Mr. Ruiz.
Well, first, I wouldn't be standing here if it wasn't for high quality and affordable education that I've utilized growing up from on a trailer in Coachella, being able to go to UCLA and then medical school and back, and keeping my promise. And so education is very important, and it's the pillar of that American dream that we all strive to achieve. I believe that the solutions to our educational systems is in the classroom. It's with our teachers who work so very hard. We need to have local control. They need to be able to assess these Common Cores, be able to be flexible and teach them to the students that they're teaching in the way that they will learn, and use technology in our classrooms. We still don't have internet in every classroom in our district, and we know that if we use technology and software in the schools, our kids will learn a lot faster and a lot more.
Okay, Mr. Nestande, 30 seconds.
Well, the problem with Common Core is we've actually had to lower our standards. California had very high math standards in particular. We had to lower those standards to fit into Common Core. And the problem with Common Core basically is we're giving our school decisions, our school curriculum, to Washington. I think that's a mistake. We have elected school boards for a reason. Allow those school boards to be in control of our education locally. I've worked hard on the State Assembly to make sure dollars flow directly to the classroom. I wrote legislation to not allow those dollars to go to the other parts of the bureaucracy. Very supportive of education, particularly career technical education. I think that's something we have lost in our schools, and I've been fighting to get it back.
All right, thank you, Mr. Nestande. Erica?
Assemblyman, in just 2 years, the federal investment tax credit will drop from 30% to 10% of the cost of solar development. The looming deadline has already cost Riverside County at least one major renewable energy project. Given the polarizing conditions in Congress, what else should the federal government do if Congress is not providing the same level of financial incentives?
Solar power is great. I mean, it's been taking over a lot of our energy needs right now. Going forward, I think solar power, particularly in the Valley, is going to continue to grow. As a matter of fact, I just had an opening for a solar company, actually over in Hemet, 400 new jobs from solar power installation. A company here, a friend of mine started a solar company without any government help, and now he's over 60 employees. It's a fantastic new energy development, and I look forward, we should encourage it in any way. But we don't need the federal government, like they did with the stimulus plan, handing monies to particular companies. Remember with the $800 billion stimulus plan that President Obama had? He gave $500 million of our taxpayer money to a particular solar company that went bankrupt a year later. Big mistake. Private enterprise works. Let it go.
Congressman, 30-second rebuttal.
We live in the best place for solar energy. Our economy is booming because of the renewable energies that we have. We need cleaner and cheaper energy. I agree with all of the above approach: natural gas, solar energy, wind energy, geothermal energy. You know, this is our competitive advantage. I believe we need to fight for jobs here in our district. I will fight for the tax incentives for our small businesses so that we can produce more solar, wind, and geothermal energy right here at home and create jobs.
Thank you. Mr. Nestande?
Oh.
Next question, excuse me. I'm sorry. We're moving on to Chris here. Chris Long.
Thank you very much. Congressman, this one is for you. We're going to continue to talk a little bit about business and the Golden State. California has been experiencing, to say the least, a difficult time attracting new business. In fact, we have been losing businesses. Tesla Motors battery plant proposed to the Salton Sea area, the latest to go elsewhere and going to Nevada. You, Congressman, were critical of your opponent in his role as a California lawmaker for not doing enough to bring the plant here, yet our state government is controlled by your party. Do you regret that attack on your opponent? And as a member of Congress, realizing it's in many ways a state issue, but as a member of Congress federally, can you do anything to help bring business to California?
Thank you for that. You know, I understand the value of a good paying job and how transformative it is for our families here in the district. And we need to fight for every single opportunity to bring jobs here. You see, it's one thing to fight and lose, but Assemblyman Brian Nestande didn't even lift a finger. So this is what we need to really have, is we need to focus on solutions, not excuses. I do believe that we need to cut red tape, accelerate business growth, make sure that we eliminate redundant and duplicative and harmful regulations. But the focus on job creation is the middle class and small businesses. I want to raise the minimum wage, decrease taxes on the middle class, and bring jobs at home. My opponent supports a plan that will give corporations tax breaks who ship jobs overseas, voted against raising the minimum wage, and a plan that would raise taxes on the middle class.
Thank you, Mr. Ruiz. Mr. Nestande?
Well, once again, your talking points don't match your record. You had plenty of opportunities to cut regulations, duplicative regulations, and you voted no. H.R. 6, many of other bills. So while you talk about, it was almost ridiculous to say that I had a responsibility or was not allowing Tesla, didn't do anything to bring Tesla here. It's your ideology, it's your regulations, it's your higher taxes that are kicking companies out of California and out of America. You want to take the same policy, the cap and trade policy that we have here in California, give it to the rest of the nation and drive the rest of the jobs out. It's ridiculous. If you loosen those regulations, get back to what business needs to do to run, we would have companies staying here in California, but to pile regulation upon regulation, tax upon taxes, that's what's driving them out of here.
Thank you, Mr. Nestande. Mr. Long?
Guns, hot button issue certainly for many across the country. This to the Assemblyman. Congress has yet to pass legislation to require universal background checks on guns, largely due to stiff opposition from the NRA. The House did recently approve a measure that would boost funding from the nation's background check system. The national database is designed to keep guns out of the hands of individuals who have felony convictions and certain mental health issues. As a congressman, if elected, what would you do to ensure that guns do not get into the hands of the wrong people?
I believe in protecting the Second Amendment. We have plenty of gun laws here in California, and a lot of states do as well. Actually, if you go a lot of the states that have the highest gun regulation, they have the highest gun violence. We need to focus on mental health. A lot of these problems that have happened with these shooters and people doing these horrible things, it's a mental health issue. We have to reach and get those kids, those families, something's going on, something's wrong there. If we can reach out to them through more counseling and so forth, that's how I believe we're going to solve this problem. But by looking just to put more regulations on guns, that's not the answer. Like I say, we have plenty of those here in California, but let's work to go to the problem, the mental health issues for our children.
Mr. Ruiz?
I'm an emergency room physician, and I've seen people come in and die with gunshot wounds. There was a 16-year-old who got shot in Coachella, and I organized a Mothers Against Violence vigil to address that and really stand firm for our effort for peace in our communities. You know, there are responsible gun owners who should be allowed to keep their guns. The issue are the irresponsible gun owners, and therefore I agree we should have universal background checks and make sure that guns don't get in the hands of those that want to hurt other people.
Thank you, Congressman. Candidates, another viewer-initiated question from the KESQ Facebook page tonight. Viewer Matthew Hernandez says border situations from immigrants to drugs to terrorist issues continue to plague our area. Mr. Hernandez wants to know how you will represent the district in securing our borders and keeping us safe, and this is directed to the Congressman.
I believe in comprehensive immigration reform, and a key element to that comprehensive immigration reform is that we need to secure our borders. We also need to ensure that we help improve our economy and give our agriculture, our tourism, our construction industries a stable workforce. No other place other than more than here relies on that immigrant labor. We also need to make sure that we have an earned path to citizenship. An earned path to citizenship will reduce our deficit, improve our economy, but that is earned. That's not amnesty. People have to pay a fine, they have to get back in line, and they also have to we also have to make sure that they've never been arrested here.
Thank you. Mr. Nestande, 30-second rebuttal.
Another big difference between Congressman Ruiz and myself, secure the borders first. That's what we have to do. You can't get to the other issues until you secure the borders for us. It's not just kids and mothers coming across the borders. It's gang members. It's terrorists. We live in a very perilous time right now. And I believe, and I believe we all probably think that the terrorists are looking to come into this nation and do us harm. They are. We have a porous border. Seal the border, secure the border first. Then let's talk about the other problems with immigration. I believe we need immigration reform, but secure the borders first.
And Mr. Nestande, how would you secure the border and pay for it?
Well, first of all, there is authorization already to pay for it. You have to use the money that's been authorized. But secondly, there's many ways to do it. First of all, the bill that Congressman Ruiz voted against, or say would have voted against, would have allowed states to have National Guard go down to the borders to help secure the borders. Second of all, there are a lot of areas in the border that the border agents are not allowed to enter because they're protected areas for endangered species and so forth. So the criminals, they don't care, or the illegal aliens, they don't care. They go right through it and the Border Patrol can't chase them. That's ridiculous. So let's put the National Guard down there if a state chooses to do so, and then reimburse that state if they do. Second of all, you can use technology like they use in Afghanistan and so forth. Put sensors around. You don't need border agents everywhere, but have sensors, and now with drones and so forth, you can secure the border. It's not a practical engineering problem, it's a political problem. We lack the will, this president lacks the will to secure the border.
Thank you, Mr. Nestande. Is it a political problem, Mr. Ruiz?
Yes, it's a political problem because we need to be allowed to vote for comprehensive immigration reform. First, look, tying terrorism to the borders and immigration is one of the worst political fear-mongering that I've ever heard. The other thing is, you know, he talks about this vote that I would have voted no, and absolutely, because it would have taken protections from children that suffer from sexual abuse through human trafficking. That's just the right thing to do. I believe we need to secure the border by using technology. That's our competitive advantage. We need to make sure that we identify who's coming over, make sure that no guns or drugs or people who want to hurt other people come over and cross our borders.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. We're going to move on here. No, I'm going to move on. So, Erica, you're going to direct this one to Mr. Nestande?
We're going to move on to the debt. You've been critical of Congressman Ruiz for voting to raise the debt ceiling, describing the vote as giving a credit card junkie an even higher credit limit, even though they're awash in debt. If you were in Congress and the federal government had maximized its ability to borrow money to pay its bills, would there be any scenario where you also would support raising the debt ceiling?
Yeah, let me get back to the border issue first. When you talk about that bill, either you didn't read it or you misrepresented it. That's not true. They did not take away the protection for those kids. They simply expedited, made it the same time if kids coming from Mexico or Guatemala or El Salvador all had the same time limit. That's all they were doing. But getting to your issue, the debt, look, we spend too much money. He's voted 3 times to raise the debt limit. He said we do not spend enough money. That's a key difference between he and I. I think we spend too much money. We have to pull back. There's many areas you can save. The CBO said there's $200 billion a year that's wasted money in duplication of spending and so forth. $200 billion a year. That'll be the first bill I write, is to get rid of those $200 billion a year. Cut the spending.
Just so we're clear, would there be any scenario in which you would also support raising the debt ceiling?
Well, if you have to raise the debt ceiling, you raise the debt ceiling. But my point is, I vote for cut spending. I'd be constantly looking for areas to cut. He thinks we should spend more. That's the fundamental difference between us.
Okay. Mr. Ruiz, you get a minute for your response.
I'll tell you what the fundamental difference is between us. I believe in being fiscally responsible, lowering our deficit and balancing the budget, but not on the backs of our seniors and middle class. You see, the budget is a statement of our values. I will stand with our seniors, our veterans, and our middle class. My opponent believes in giving tax breaks to multimillionaires and corporations who ship jobs overseas. He wants to balance the budget, but on the backs of our middle class and our seniors, especially by supporting a plan that would end Medicare as we know it and make seniors pay thousands of dollars more.
Well, now you're just making stuff up. That's simply not true. You took $700 billion out of Medicare with Obamacare. It's not a convenient fact, but that's true. And I don't know what you're referring to when you talk about my position.
Your defense of the Ryan plan that would end Medicare as we know it.
I never said I would,
seven,
Congressman.
The
you can't just make stuff up as you go along here.
It's documented.
No, it is not. It said I would support 3 pillars of the plan. I never said I would support the voucher plan.
$700 billion
simply not
reduction
true. You can't
in
make stuff up
overpayments.
here.
Thank you, gentlemen. We're moving on to the next question. Erica Felci from the Desert Sun.
This question goes to the Congressman. In the combined 8 years that the two of you have served in office, there have been countless promises by local Democrats and Republicans to make the problems of the Salton Sea a priority. Why haven't there been more results delivered? And why should voters think that sending you back to Congress will help make actual progress in addressing the dying lake?
You know, the Salton Sea is very important for me and my family. We have great memories of my father taking us out there. And ever since I've taken office, we've had more momentum since we've had in 10 years. The very first thing that we did was to partner with Senator Boxer and bring the Secretary of the Interior, Ken Salazar, down and advocate for the Salton Sea. We've been able to designate the area as a renewable energy zone. We're on the verge of a shovel-to-ground project with the Red Hill Bay mitigation project, and we also brokered a partnership between the Department of the Interior, the IID, the Imperial Irrigation District, and the Salton Sea Authority. We need to make sure that we have all hands on deck. Public, private investments, including state, government, the tribes, philanthropists, and foundations. As a community, we can do it.
Mr. Nestande, your response.
Sure. I've already started. I reached across the aisle, co-authored a bill with fellow Democrats to create a license plate that says Save the Salton Sea. And if you buy that license plate, and I hope you will, that money goes directly into the restoration of the sea. And Governor Jerry Brown just signed that bill last week. And think about all the people that come to the area from other countries, other states, and they see these license plates that say Save the Salton Sea. That's going to raise great awareness. But the difference I have with him, I'm not for more studies. He wants to study the sea more. It's been studied enough. I got a plan to start action now. I'm going to be releasing this week that talks about how we can start construction to restore the sea now, not more studies that you want to do.
Thank you, Mr. Nestande. Mr. Long.
Thank you, Karen. Assemblyman, I've received in my mailbox over the last few weeks a couple of flyers. Here they are right here. I don't know if they can be seen, but I am sure many other of our people in the Valley have gotten them too. They are paid for and backed by the state Democratic Party, although it does not mention your opponent's name. Highly, highly critical of you, Assemblyman. I'll read just in short. Nestande and his businesses have been hit with a multiple tax lien since 2005 for owing more than $10,000 in unpaid taxes. Then he lied to voters. Politician Nestande and his business failed to pay more than $10,000 in taxes and have been hit with multiple tax liens, in essence saying pretty much the same thing since 2005. How do you respond to these flyers from, again, the state Democratic Party?
Well, let's be clear. It's from my opponent. They filter money through the state Democrat Party, but it's from my opponent. It's nice to hide behind that. But look, I started a small business here, and I struggled, like many other people have. It's not easy to start a business. I had good years and I had bad years. So I had a tax lien back about 10 years ago, and I paid it off. But I continued on. I persevered, and I did well. I'm proud of that. Hired employees, and I'm proud of my business. But once again, it's the politics of personal destruction. When you don't have issues, if you're not right on the issues, if you don't line up in a district that you represent on the issues, you attack someone personally. I'm not doing that. I'm only talking about the issues. He wants to try and tear me down personally. It's not going to work.
Congressman, do you endorse these mailings that are highly critical of your opponent?
You know, those mailings, I'll have to discuss with those who did those, to make sure we get the facts right.
You're aware of them, though, aren't you?
Yeah, I was aware of them, and I think that the point here is that there are too many career politicians who do this for their own personal benefit. The point here is that I'm an emergency room physician who has devoted my life to improve the lives of the people I serve. That's why I have voted for a no budget, no pay in Congress, and I also sponsored a bill that would prevent congressional members from flying first class on taxpayers' dime. Didn't make me popular, but that's what I believe.
I'm up here. Thank you very much. Okay. Chris, you have another question.
I do indeed. Let's talk marijuana. How about that, gentlemen? For the most part, Congress had sidestepped the marijuana issue. The House considered a bill that would have exempted certain strains of low THC marijuana used for medical purposes from a federal ban on the plant, but stopped short of legalizing other forms of pot that most patients consume. Here's the question. Do you support the legalization of medical marijuana on a national level? And do you ever foresee the day when the nation does as Washington State and Colorado have done and legalize marijuana for recreational use? Congressman.
Well, I don't support legalizing marijuana throughout the nation. Medicinal marijuana is used for people with cancer to help stimulate their appetite to eat in order for them to prevent the weight loss that usually comes with the cancer and chemotherapy. But as an emergency medicine doctor, I get teenagers coming to me in the emergency department for aches and pains, or maybe they fell off their bike, and then they're asking me for marijuana cards. So I think we need to get real and make sure that that we address the problem as it is. And no, I do not support legalizing marijuana.
Thank you, Congressman. Mr. Nestande, 30-second rebuttal.
Yeah, I'm against legalizing pot. I want to take my time to go back to your ridiculous statement. You don't know about these mailers? Give me a break. Once again, if you want to attack me, just do it up front. That's fine. I'm going to talk about the issues. I know you don't want to talk about the issues, but to go into these personal attacks like that, that's what turns voters off. And I think we've had enough of that in politics. Let's just focus on the issues and not get into personal destruction like you're doing. And if you want to, just stand up for it, be a man and say, I want to attack you on the issues, and not hide behind some other group. That's just ridiculous.
So let's stick with the issues and go back to the marijuana question.
I'm just legalizing pot.
Just against it, period.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Nestande. Erica.
It's interesting. I was once in church, and I heard somebody say that if you throw a rock into a group of dogs, the dog that gets hit is the one that barks and yells. So I think that there's some truth. There must be some truth to what they're saying, because it's definitely something that's really tearing on Assemblyman Nestande's mind.
Can I bring up he brought
I
up
think
his...
the personal attacks are done. We're going to move on to the next
Well, I
question.
agree. I was going to talk about something else, but I'll be happy
let's
for the
go
next
forward.
question.
Assemblyman, with many Coachella Valley residents and visitors using Dallas as a travel hub, the news of the confirmed Ebola cases has prompted alarm. Should the federal government be doing more during this healthcare crisis?
Well, I think the CDC is doing a good job. I think it's important that the federal government, the FDA, coordinate with the World Health Organization to ensure that we have a quick process for review for any new drugs, any new vaccines, hopefully they're working on, or any therapeutic drugs. I think they're quarantining the people. That's absolutely necessary, obviously. But if we can catch this problem over in Africa where it is right now, obviously that's the most important thing to do. But coordinating between the different countries in America to get a vaccine, like say, or a drug quickly to market. A lot of times there's a lot of delays in doing so. So let's get something approved quickly. Let's make sure the protocols are the same for all countries.
Mr. Ruiz?
Yes, the Ebola virus is a virus that can cause hemorrhagic fever, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea. It's transmitted through bodily fluids, and there's no cure right now. It's very important that right now that we start to build our capacity to contain the virus in Africa. I know World Health Organization is there. The World Bank is making investments. My group that I worked with before, Partners in Health, was there. And we need to make sure we also have that capacity here to prevent the spread and to provide supportive care.
Thank you. All right, Chris.
All right, this one goes to Congressman Ruiz. Let's talk something on the mind of all Californians. That's our drought situation. Short of a rain dance, I think we're going to have to do something very serious right here. California, one of several western and southwest states suffering certainly from record drought. If you believe in climate change, and I'd like your answer on this as part of this, do you feel it is man-caused or just the normal evolution of our planet? And also, as a member of Congress, what would you try to do to alleviate the effects of drought in California? And personally, with your homes here, and both of you have homes here in the Valley, are you doing anything as far as trying to maintain our water supply? Congressman, you begin.
Yes. We live in the desert. We know how important water is to our economy and to our very own existence. This is global climate change is a man-made issue with our reliance on fossil fuels and our pollution and destroying of the ozone layer. See, we need to make sure that we use technology in the homes to conserve water better. We need to convert from flood irrigation to drip irrigation in our fields right here in our desert. And we also have to recycle water better. This is an issue that we need to address as a state, but you better rest assured that I will not allow other regions siphoning off our water.
Thank you, Mr. Ruiz. Mr. Nestande?
We are certainly in a drought, but part of this drought is man-made, because while we're dry right now, there's been water that has been going down up in Sacramento to save a small fish, a minnow called the Delta smelt. And instead of bringing that water to farmers in the Central Valley, it's gone to the fish. And what's happened is it's fallowed thousands of acres of land. Farms have gone out of business, and our food prices have risen. I don't know if, I'm sure you've all noticed, but food prices are going up. That's a direct result of these environmental regulations that are too burdensome and just don't make sense. Congressman Ruiz had a chance to alter those regulations to allow that water to go to farmers, and he voted no. He sided with the environmentalists to say, no, we're going to protect the Delta smelt over our food prices.
Thank you so much. Did you have a 15-second rebuttal to that?
Yeah, simply, I voted no to that bill because that bill would have prevented us here in the desert. I represent the people here. I don't represent the people of the Central Valley. I represent the people here. I'm going to fight for the people here, and that would have prevented us in the long term to be able to get some of that water here if our drought gets even worse for us in the desert.
Thank you, gentlemen. Erica?
Let's continue on the drought. If the drought continues to worsen, it's likely the state could impose stricter limits on the amount of water that is used each day. What type of drought measures do you support? And is there a stronger role that Congress needs to take in order to protect this resource?
Yeah, first of all, I was the only Republican to vote with the Democrats to make sure we measure and save our groundwater. We have depletion of our aquifers, not only here but in other parts of the state, so I think it's important that the steps start to quantify that water and make sure we protect our groundwater. Once again, I was the only Republican to vote for that, and I'm very proud of that. We must protect our water. And I'm sorry, I forgot the other part of your question. Can you name me on to the drought? What was it?
What types of drought measures do you support, and is there a stronger role that Congress can take?
Yeah, we have to conserve water, obviously, protect our groundwater, conserve water, just be good stewards of it. But once again, we have to build storage. I didn't talk about that, but build dams. Water runs off the mountains into the sea. Build a dam, build 2 or 3 dams to hold that water for the dry years. That's what's missing in this equation. And Congressman Ruiz and the ideology on the left, the environmentalists, do not want dams and reservoirs. That's a big mistake. We have plenty of water if we capture it and hold it for the dry years.
Mr. Ruiz, how do you respond?
I believe that we need to seriously take a look at these drought measures, and I'm proud to say that I brought home $7.3 million from the USDA grants in order to bring clean water infrastructure to our communities right here. We need to make sure that we take measures and utilize the beauty of our desert and our landscape that doesn't rely on waters like many golf courses and many places here in the Coachella Valley have done, and use measures like that also in the home.
Thank you, Congressman.
Congressman, while we're on the topic of the environment, let's talk a little seismology here. We all know that the big one could hit our area. Many seismologists say will eventually hit. Do you think we are doing enough? And at the congressional level, can you do anything to help people in Southern California in particular, although let's not forget our neighbors in Northern California, get better prepared for the big one? And there are early earthquake warning systems that are out there, but they seem to be rather slow in implementation. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, first of all, my subspecialty in emergency medicine is humanitarian disaster aid, and I've been trained in that. And I don't think that we are fully prepared for the big one. I believe that there are some initiatives around and programs that we need to educate, we need to train, we need to go back to the days and train our kids in schools on how to deal with an earthquake. We need to learn what we need to keep in the home. We need to make sure that we have communication systems available so that when we do lose our communication power lines, that we're able to connect with our family and tell our families that we're okay and identify those. And we also need to start focusing on our STEM education with our students and build pipelines that will help us produce the technologies that we need for the future to determine when we have the earthquake sooner than we do now.
Thank you, Mr. Ruiz. Assemblyman.
Yes, I agree. We should have an early warning system. There's been 2 competing ideas out there for how to do that, and I think as the one comes forth, that's the best one. We should implement that one in particular. Let me go back, if I can, to the budget for a moment. Congressman Ruiz said he's proud of this vote he had on no budget, no pay. Well, guess what? He voted against all the budgets. They had no budget, but yet he took his pay. To be clear, the law said that he voted for, if there's no budget by April of 2013, they would not accept their pay. There was no budget, and he took his pay.
Yes. There's no law. You know, we voted for that law, but that bill, which passed the House, but there's no law. And the other thing is that during that shutdown, I did not receive a pay.
Well, you did receive your pay.
During the shutdown, I did not receive the pay.
But they paid you back all that money. The point is, if you're going to make a big statement,
the point is
like no budget, no pay, don't take your pay.
On one side of your mouth, you talk about personal attacks. On the other side, you're doing the personal attacks.
It's on issues, though,
so we got to make sure that we stick to the issues here.
I'm not going back in your past to talk about issues. I'm sticking on the issues that are relevant to public policy.
Let's move to the next one. Erica.
The Supreme Court's recent rulings have given some clarity to the legality of same-sex marriage. Where do you stand on the issue?
I support marriage equality. I also support a strong separation of church and state. The state should not be telling churches who they should marry.
Thank you. Congressman?
Assemblyman Brian Nestande voted against marriage equality in the state. Let me repeat that. Assemblyman Brian Nestande voted against marriage equality in the state. I am opposed to every form of discrimination, including who you want to marry. I am for marriage equality.
I thought I stated my position clearly. I'm not sure what bill you're referring to either.
What bill are you referring to?
We'll get you the information.
Okay. Would you like 15 more seconds to talk about that?
No, I think we're good.
Okay, all right.
Why do we have to wait to get it? You couldn't tell us now?
I don't know the name or the number of that bill, but I can get that to you.
Okay.
Because I don't think there's been a bill because it was not, as you know, it was working through the court system after a Prop 8. So there's been various bills on defining man and woman and spouse, and I voted on the bill to support to change the word to spouse. So I really don't know what bill you're talking about.
Well,
We'll wait to see some clarification. Thank you, both of you. Yes.
My turn?
Yes.
For the Congressman, let's talk wage gap a little bit here. I think it's fair to say the 36th district, which you represent and the Assemblyman hopes to represent, has some of the greatest wealth in this country and also, sadly, some of the worst poverty. As recently as last weekend, the Flying Doctors program, they bring in free medical and dental health. Believe it or not, I think it's quite amazing, our East Valley is the only place in the continental United States that the Flying Doctors come into. Do you agree that there continues to be a growing divide between the haves and the have-nots? And if you remain in Congress, and for you, Assemblyman, should you get to Congress, what would you do to try to close this much talked about income gap?
Absolutely. People can feel it in their pocket. The income inequality continues to grow. The middle class is disappearing. And that's one main difference here between my opponent and me. I am for the middle class and our small businesses. I fight to reduce taxes on the middle class, to raise the minimum wage. I fight to reduce burdensome regulations and cut red tape for our small businesses. My opponent fights to protect tax breaks for multimillionaires and corporations who ship jobs overseas. And he supports this plan that would raise taxes on the middle class.
Mr. Nestande.
Once again, I have no idea what you're talking about, what plan to raise tax on the middle class. I don't know what you're referring to. But secondly, let's get back to Tesla for a moment. When you say special breaks, that's exactly what you wanted to do for Tesla. I'm for lowering regulation and taxes on all businesses, statewide or nationwide, not pick one favorite company over another. That's exactly what Congressman Ruiz wanted to do with Tesla, say, we're going to put all these regulations on everybody, but the ones that have the good lobbyists, the expensive lobbyists and lawyers that want an exception, we'll give you the exemption. But everybody else, no, you live under all the regulations. I think that is a big difference between you and I. I want fairness for everybody to compete.
A quick follow-up, we'll start with the Congressman. Can this be done, narrowing this income gap, by raising the bottom up as opposed to bringing the top down?
Absolutely. If you give tax breaks to the middle class, they have more in their pocket, they spend more, small businesses can flourish and thrive, because those are the true job creators, our middle class and our small businesses. Absolutely.
Sandy?
I'm all for cutting taxes, but the difference is between us, the Obama policies have driven the middle class to a lower class. It's simply true. This is the most amount of people are not looking for work anymore. How do you phrase that? 64% of Americans no longer are looking for jobs. The lowest participation rate in 30 years. It's because President Obama has put disincentives for businesses to hire people. If you hire more people or put them full-time, you get a penalty. That's not the right way to do it. We should encourage businesses to hire and not penalize them when they move somebody to full-time. We've created a part-time economy, and that's not anecdotal. It's true. That's happening.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. Our final question tonight from Desert Sun's Erica Felci.
Assemblyman, Republicans in the state assembly, much like Democrats in the House, have to learn to work across the political aisle in order to get legislation passed. This creates an opportunity to recognize smart bipartisan ideas. What proposals has your opponent championed in his time in the House that you also support?
What measures has he championed and I support? Gosh, to be honest, I don't remember. Can I talk about ones that I've championed that I support? I reached across the aisle to lower the regulations. Once again, going back to all these environmental regulations and taxes, I stuck my neck out as the only Republican to say we should level the playing field for all, because what we were doing, what the Democrat majority was doing, was picking certain companies to give them those special tax breaks or the breaks from the regulations. So I went on a limb to say I will vote for a bill that Democrats wanted me to vote for, but we have to regulate or lower regulations for all companies to make it fair. And it didn't pass, but my point is I've reached across the aisle. I actually lost my leadership position because I was willing to do that. We have to stop the special interest breaks. That's what we've been doing, and it's simply against our free market, free enterprise system. We should have an equal level playing field for all. That's how we're going to raise the wages for people.
Mr. Ruiz.
I've worked with Republicans in the House to pass a law that would improve health care for veterans. I've worked with Democrats and Republicans right here at home to launch our Veterans University that will help educate and train our veterans to get the benefits and the health care that they need. I've also brought home $1.5 million in benefits that were owed to both Democrats and Republican veterans right here at home. I've worked with veterans to stop the use of stop the use of taxpayer money for congressional members to fly first class, and I've also worked with Republicans to fix the Affordable Care Act, and as I voted to delay the individual mandate and stood up to Congresswoman Pelosi and President Obama.
I think we have time for one final question, don't we?
She wants to ask.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say that neither of you really answered the question. The question is about your opponent. While we understand your efforts to reach across the aisle, is there anything that your opponent has championed that you would also support? 1 minute each, gentlemen.
Yeah, I would definitely support that the congressional members should use the same exchanges in the states that they're from. I believe that congressional members should use the same exchanges with the Affordable Care Act from the states that they're from.
Well, I would have voted, I guess, to delay that mandate. That was a Republican bill to delay the mandate on businesses for Obamacare. But the problem is that mandate ends in a couple months after the election, conveniently. I would have supported to eliminate that mandate altogether. Just to delay the hurt for 1 year doesn't make much sense to me, but I guess it might be an area we would have agreed on then.
Okay, one more question, Chris.
Very quickly, you guys know each other well, and I think we're starting with the Congressman. What character trait in your opponent do you admire?
You know, he has 7 children, and as you know, it's one more than the Brady Bunch, that's for sure. You know, I recently got married, and there's nothing more important to me than my family, and we're hoping to have children. So that's something that I really appreciate from Assemblyman Brian Nestande.
Assemblyman?
Family man.
And you can have a couple of those kids if you want. Anyways, I appreciate obviously the great work he's done in his volunteer capacity as a doctor, going to Haiti and the different work you've done out here at the Flying Doctors. It's very admirable.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. That's all the questions that we have. At the time now is for the closing statements. You remember that coin toss that we had. Congressman Ruiz won that coin toss. He'll make the final closing statement. Mr. Nestande, you are up first.
Thank you. In 1994, President Clinton declared the era of big government is over. President Obama and Congressman Ruiz have brought it back and have doubled down. Our government is larger than ever. The national debt has almost doubled during Obama's presidency, and Congressman Ruiz supports more spending. It's time for change. 2 years ago, my opponent promised to balance the budget and cut spending, but he voted to increase spending and raise the national debt 3 times. While in Washington, he's voted with President Obama's agenda 90% of the time. During the past 2 years, we've seen scandals like the Veterans Administration, the IRS, failed promises of Obamacare, and the Benghazi cover-up. Under Obama and Ruiz, our country is weaker. Look at the rise of ISIS, the arrogance of leaders such as Putin, and a total lack of a clear foreign policy. It's time for change. Recently, President Obama said, "I'm not on the ballot this fall, but make no mistake, every single one of my policies is on the ballot." He's right. And that is the way it will be. I will be a check and balance on President Obama. American ingenuity, hard work, and her competitive spirit will create jobs, raise wages. Free enterprise has made us the greatest nation on earth. Ultimately, please remember, a smaller government means a bigger paycheck for you. I'd be honored to have your vote for Congress. Thank you.
Thank you for your closing statement, Assemblyman Brian Nestande. Congressman Dr. Raul Ruiz.
Once again, I want to thank the Desert Sun, Local 2, and KESQ for hosting this debate, and Assemblyman Nestande for participating. This debate has accomplished exactly what it was supposed to. It gave voters the opportunity to see some of the differences between Assemblyman Nestande and myself. I believe that Social Security and Medicare are a sacred commitment we made to retirees. He believes we should replace Medicare with a voucher program that would cost seniors thousands of dollars a year in higher costs. I believe that we should give tax relief to the middle class and crack down on big corporations that ship jobs overseas. He believes the opposite. I believe we should fix the Affordable Care Act so that it works better. He believes we should return to the days when insurance companies could deny coverage to people with pre-existing conditions and charge women higher premiums. And I believe that elected officials should put the good of their constituents ahead of partisan politics. His record and comments show that he believes it's more important to follow his partisan leadership, even when that contributes to gridlock. One of the things that I'm proudest of is the number of people who voted for my opponent in 2012 and are now supporting me. I believe I represent every person in the district. No matter what your party, I will fight for you, and I will be honored to earn your vote. Thank you, God bless you, and God bless America.
And thank you, gentlemen. On behalf of KESQ News Channel 3, CBS Local 2, and the Desert Sun, Erica Felci, Chris Long, and myself. Thank you both, Assemblyman Brian Nestande, Dr. Raul Ruiz, Congressman. We so appreciate that you came together today to do this live debate here.
Thank you.
We want to thank our viewers as well. We want to ask that you get out and vote on November 4th. If you can't get to the polls, please mail in your ballot. You can stay with KESQ News Channel 3 and CBS Local 2 online and on Facebook. Have a great night.
From the combined resources of KESQ News Channel 3, the Desert Sun, and CBS Local 2 News, you've been watching Your Vote 2014, the Congressional Debate. To watch it again online, visit KESQ.com, CBSLocal2.com, or DesertSun.com.